The universe operates through cosmic synchronicity, not random chance. Before your eyes first met your husband's, before you knew his name or felt the resonance of his voice, your souls had already recognized each other. This recognition stems from a deeper spiritual reality that transcends our physical existence. When two souls connect in marriage, they are fulfilling an arrangement that was established long before either entered their current physical form. As Edgar once revealed through his remarkable insights, these connections are not arbitrary, but precisely orchestrated by higher consciousness. Your husband didn't randomly appear in your life. His entrance was a carefully choreographed moment in your soul's journey. Consider how many decisions, circumstances, and seemingly unrelated events had to align perfectly for your paths to cross. This divine orchestration speaks to the intentional nature of soul connections. What appears as coincidence on the surface level of reality is actually the manifestation of spiritual magnetism. Your energy field and his were drawn together through vibrational harmony that responds to soul agreements made before incarnation. This is why certain encounters feel so familiar, as if you've known someone for lifetimes, because often you have. The initial attraction you felt toward your husband wasn't merely physical or emotional. It was your soul recognizing its counterpart in the spiritual journey. This recognition often comes with an inexplicable feeling of coming home or a deep knowing that transcends logical explanation. Your husband appeared in your life not primarily for comfort or convenience, but as a catalyst for profound spiritual growth. He serves as a mirror reflecting aspects of yourself that require healing, integration, and transformation. The challenging moments in your relationship aren't failures of the union, but rather opportunities for soul evolution that were spiritually designed. Many seek partners who complement their strengths or share their perspectives, but spiritual wisdom teaches us that we are often drawn to those who will challenge our unhealed wounds. Your husband may trigger responses in you that seem disproportionate to the situation. These are indicators of deeper soul patterns asking to be addressed. The spiritual purpose of marriage extends far beyond companionship or social convention. It serves as a vehicle for accelerated soul growth, where two beings agree to help each other evolve through both harmony and discord. The discomfort you may experience in relationship isn't a sign of incompatibility, but often evidence of the soul-level work being accomplished. Your husband's presence in your life represents a response to energetic patterns you've been developing across multiple lifetimes. His role may be to help you develop patience, to teach you unconditional love, to challenge your attachments, or to help you reclaim your authentic power. Whatever the lesson, it was chosen by your higher self for your spiritual advancement. When you view your marriage through this spiritual lens, every interaction becomes meaningful. Arguments aren't just conflicts to resolve, but opportunities to witness your own triggers and patterns. Moments of joy aren't just pleasant experiences, but glimpses of the soul connection beneath the human drama. The initial meeting with your husband, whether it felt magical or ordinary at the time, was the physical manifestation of a spiritual agreement. Your souls recognized each other amid the noise and distraction of physical existence. This recognition might have felt like intuition, attraction, or simply a sense that this person would be significant in your life journey. The sacred bond of marriage extends far beyond the legal documentation and ceremonial vows exchanged in this lifetime. What appears as a modern union is often the continuation of a soul agreement that transcends linear time, a contract written not with ink, but with the ethereal substance of consciousness itself. These soul contracts are not casual arrangements, but profound agreements made with clear intention and purpose. Before your current incarnation, your soul and your husband's engaged in a divine planning session, where you both agreed to reunite in this lifetime to continue your mutual evolution. This spiritual arrangement wasn't created for comfort or convenience, but for the acceleration of consciousness expansion that only certain relationships can catalyze. Consider that your yes to marriage in this lifetime may have originated from a promise made centuries ago in another existence. Many wives feel an inexplicable certainty when meeting their future husband, a knowing that transcends logical reasoning. This recognition stems from the soul's memory of agreements made in the spiritual realm before birth. Your higher self remembers what your conscious mind has forgotten. Some marriages represent karmic balancing, a sacred opportunity to resolve energetic debts or heal wounds created in previous shared lifetimes. If you and your husband experience conflict, betrayal, or unresolved emotions in a past incarnation, you may have chosen to reunite specifically to transform that energy through love and conscious interaction. What appears as tension or recurring conflict in your current relationship might actually be the manifestation of these ancient energetic patterns seeking resolution. The spiritual understanding of marriage reveals that we don't simply choose partners based on compatibility or attraction, but rather through soul magnetism that draws together those who have unfinished spiritual business. Your husband may have once been your child, your parent, your enemy, or your teacher in previous lifetimes. The nature of your past connection influences the dynamics of your present relationship, often in ways that remain subconscious until illuminated through spiritual awareness. Each challenge that arises within your marriage represents an opportunity for karmic liberation. The recurring arguments, the triggers that seem disproportionate to current circumstances, the inexplicable emotional reactions, these are not random difficulties, but precisely calibrated spiritual lessons designed to free both souls from limiting patterns. When you respond to these challenges with consciousness rather than reactivity, you accelerate your karmic clearing and fulfill the higher purpose of your union. The spiritual wisdom traditions teach that souls often travel in groups across multiple lifetimes, taking different roles in each incarnation to facilitate mutual growth. Your husband's soul may have agreed to play a challenging role in your current life, specifically to help you develop qualities like forgiveness, boundaries, compassion, or self-worth. This soul-level agreement transcends the personality-level interactions you experience daily. Some marriages represent the continuation of a soul partnership that has spanned centuries and multiple incarnations. These souls have chosen to reunite lifetime after lifetime, sometimes as lovers, sometimes as family members, sometimes as adversaries, all for the purpose of mutual spiritual refinement. If you feel an unusually deep connection with your husband that seems to transcend the time you've known each other in this life, you may be experiencing the resonance of this ancient soul bond. The concept of karmic debt in marriage doesn't imply punishment, but rather the natural balancing of energy that occurs throughout soul evolution. If your husband has hurt you in this lifetime, or if you have wounded him, understand that these experiences may be creating opportunities to resolve similar dynamics from shared past lives. Every act of forgiveness, every moment of genuine understanding, contributes to the spiritual liberation of both souls. When marriage feels particularly challenging, remember that you are not simply navigating a human relationship. You are engaged in profound spiritual work that your soul specifically chose for its evolution. The spiritual purpose of these difficulties isn't to cause suffering, but to create the necessary pressure for transformation. Just as coal requires intense pressure to become a diamond, souls require certain challenges to achieve their highest potential. Marriage serves as a powerful accelerator for spiritual growth precisely because it combines intimacy with commitment. The sustained connection creates the perfect environment for triggering and then healing the deepest patterns of the soul. What might take decades to process through other relationships or spiritual practices can be catalyzed much more quickly through the intensity of marriage. Your husband appeared in your life at the exact moment when your soul was ready for the particular lessons this relationship would facilitate. The divine timing of your meeting wasn't accidental, but precisely orchestrated by higher consciousness to align with your soul's readiness for this specific growth opportunity. Every disagreement, every moment of harmony, serves the higher purpose of your mutual evolution. In the spiritual understanding of relationships, love manifests not always as the gentle, comforting emotion portrayed in romantic narratives, but often as a profound catalyst for awakening. Your husband may have entered your life not primarily to provide the comfort and security that human attachment desires, but to serve as a powerful teacher disguised as a partner. This teaching aspect of marriage represents one of the deepest spiritual purposes of intimate relationships. The wisdom traditions have long understood that our most significant spiritual teachers rarely appear in conventional forms. They don't always sit on mountaintops or speak from pulpits. Sometimes they share our beds, our meals, and our daily lives. Edgar shared remarkable insights about this phenomenon. explaining that many husbands come into their wives' lives not to fulfill expectations of romantic fantasy, but to awaken consciousness precisely where spiritual blindness exists. When love brings pain rather than pleasure, confusion rather than clarity, or challenge rather than comfort, it's often because the teacher aspect of your husband's soul is actively fulfilling its sacred purpose. The discomfort you experience isn't evidence of a failed relationship, but rather confirmation that profound soul work is occurring. Just as a physical workout causes muscle fibers to tear before strengthening, emotional and spiritual growth often requires the breaking down of existing patterns before new awareness can emerge. Your husband may trigger reactions in you that seem entirely disproportionate to the current situation. Intense anger, inexplicable sadness, or overwhelming fear that appears irrational even to your own mind. These amplified responses aren't random emotional instability, but precise indicators of where your soul carries unhealed wounds. Each trigger serves as a spiritual GPS, pointing directly to the areas requiring your conscious attention and healing presence. The spiritual teaching that manifests through marriage often focuses on dismantling attachment and illusion, the very elements that create suffering in human experience. Your husband may challenge your attachments to being right, to controlling outcomes, to avoiding vulnerability, or to maintaining a particular self-image. When he fails to meet your expectations or behaves in ways that contradict your desires, he's often unconsciously serving as the catalyst for releasing these attachments that limit your spiritual freedom. Some of the most powerful teaching in marriage comes through the experience of disappointment. When your husband fails to be who you thought he was or wanted him to be, this creates a sacred opportunity to examine your projections and expectations. The spiritual lesson isn't about fixing him to match your desires, but about recognizing how your attachment to specific outcomes creates suffering. As these attachments dissolve through conscious awareness, genuine love, which transcends conditions and expectations, can emerge. The teacher aspect of love often works through contrast and opposition. If you value control, your husband may embody spontaneity. If you fear abandonment, he may require independence. If you avoid conflict, he may express himself forcefully. These opposing energies aren't evidence of incompatibility, but rather the perfect spiritual design for your evolution. The friction between different approaches creates the necessary heat for transformation, much like the alchemical process that turns base metals into gold. Many spiritual teachings suggest that we don't truly know ourselves until we're in relationship. The mirrors that our partners hold reflect not just our conscious qualities, but also our shadow aspects, the parts of ourselves we've denied, repressed, or failed to integrate. Your husband may trigger your hidden anger, unexpressed grief, or disowned power, not because he's trying to hurt you, but because his soul agreed to help make these invisible aspects visible for healing and integration. When marriage becomes painful, there's a tendency to blame the partner or the relationship itself. Yet from a spiritual perspective, this pain is often evidence that the teaching function is working effectively. The discomfort you feel when old patterns are challenged, when illusions are shattered, or when attachments are threatened represents the necessary labor pains that precede spiritual rebirth. The teacher hasn't failed when pain emerges. Rather, the teaching is succeeding. The spiritual wisdom traditions recognize that genuine transformation rarely occurs through intellectual understanding alone. We may intellectually grasp concepts of unconditional love, non-attachment, or present moment awareness, but embodying these truths requires direct experience. Your husband serves as the catalyst for this embodied learning, creating situations that demand you practice these spiritual principles rather than merely contemplate them. Marriage as a spiritual teaching doesn't mean accepting abuse or remaining in truly harmful situations. Rather, it invites discernment between the discomfort of genuine growth and the damage of destructive patterns. The spiritual teacher aspect of your husband will challenge you, trigger you, and sometimes disappoint you, but always in service to your highest evolution, never your diminishment. True spiritual teaching always leads toward greater wholeness, even when the path traverses difficult terrain. The most profound teachings often come through the ordinary moments of marriage rather than dramatic events. The daily irritations, the small disappointments, the routine conflicts provide constant opportunities for practicing presence, compassion, and non-reactivity. Your husband's habits that annoy you, his differences in perspective that frustrate you, his needs that inconvenience you, these create the perfect gymnasium for strengthening your spiritual muscles through regular exercise. When you recognize that your husband is serving, often unconsciously, as a spiritual teacher in your life, you can approach your relationship with reverence rather than resentment. The challenges he presents transform from obstacles to opportunities, from problems to solve into invitations to evolve. This shift in perspective doesn't eliminate the difficulty of the lessons, but it infuses them with meaning and purpose that transcends the immediate experience of discomfort. Within the sacred container of marriage exists one of the most powerful spiritual mechanisms for growth, the mirror of shadows. Your husband doesn't merely stand before you as a companion or partner, but as a living reflection of the aspects of your soul that remain unintegrated, unhealed, or unconscious. This mirroring function represents perhaps the most challenging yet transformative dimension of the marital relationship. The spiritual wisdom traditions have long recognized that what we most strongly react to in others reveals what remains unhealed within ourselves. When your husband's behaviors trigger disproportionate emotional responses, whether jealousy, frustration, anger, or pain, he is actually illuminating parts of your inner landscape that require attention and healing. These shadows aren't flaws to eliminate, but aspects of your wholeness waiting to be reclaimed through conscious awareness. Consider how specific patterns in your marriage consistently evoke emotional intensity. Perhaps your husband's need for space activates your abandonment fears. Maybe his expression of certain opinions ignites your defensive reactions, or his approach to finances triggers your insecurities. These triggering moments aren't random irritations, but precisely calibrated revelations of your internal terrain, the exact areas where your soul seeks integration and healing. The jealousy that surfaces in your relationship doesn't primarily reflect your husband's behavior, but rather your own unresolved relationship with worthiness, security, and trust. The frustration you feel when communication breaks down points not just to external miscommunication, but to internal divisions between your conscious intentions and unconscious patterns. The incomprehension you experience when trying to understand your husband's perspective reveals not his inability to express himself clearly, but the limitations of your own perceptual framework. This mirroring function explains why marriage often becomes more challenging over time, rather than easier. As the initial romantic projection fades, the soul begins its real work, using the relationship as a vehicle for shadow integration. What initially attracted you to your husband may have been qualities that complemented your conscious self, but what triggers you are the qualities that reflect your disowned shadows. Both attractions and triggers serve the soul's agenda for wholeness. The spiritual purpose of marriage extends far beyond companionship or social convention. It serves as an alchemical vessel for transmuting unconscious material into conscious awareness. When your husband reflects aspects of yourself that you've denied, rejected, or failed to recognize, he's not causing your suffering, but rather revealing where liberation awaits. Each triggering interaction contains the potential for profound self-realization if approached with conscious awareness rather than reflexive reaction. Many spiritual seekers spend years in meditation, prayer, or contemplative practice attempting to illuminate their shadow aspects, yet marriage often accelerates this process through its intimate intensity. The sustained proximity to another being who consistently reflects your unintegrated aspects creates the perfect conditions for shadow work. Your husband serves as both the revealer of shadows and the sacred witness to your integration process. The misunderstandings that plague many marriages often stem not from genuine incompatibility, but from the projection of unresolved internal conflicts onto the relationship. When you project your inner critic onto your husband, perceiving judgment where none may exist, you're being shown where self-judgment remains active within your psyche. When you project your inner controller onto him, feeling constrained by imagined demands, you're witnessing where self-control has become rigid rather than flexible. This mirroring dynamic explains why changing partners rarely resolves relationship patterns. Without conscious integration of the shadows revealed in one relationship, similar dynamics will emerge with a new partner, often with even greater intensity. The soul doesn't abandon its agenda for wholeness simply because the external circumstances change. It will continue creating situations that reflect your internal divisions until integration occurs through conscious awareness. The spiritual invitation within marriage is to recognize that your husband's triggering behaviors serve as portals to your own healing. When he acts in ways that activate your wounds, the opportunity isn't to change him, but to witness your own reaction with compassion and curiosity. What beliefs underlie your emotional response? What unmet needs are being activated? What aspects of yourself are you rejecting through your judgment of him? These questions transform triggering moments from relationship problems into spiritual practices. The acceptance that marriage demands isn't merely tolerance of your husband's differences or forbearance of his perceived flaws. Rather, it's the profound acceptance of your own wholeness, including the aspects revealed through your reactions to him. When you judge him harshly, you're being shown where self-judgment remains. When his behavior seems intolerable, you're witnessing where self-acceptance remains conditional. The path to relationship harmony lies not in changing the other, but in embracing the totality of yourself. This shadow mirror function explains why marriage simultaneously feels like the most natural and most challenging human experience. It's natural because it fulfills the soul's deep longing for wholeness through relationship. It's challenging because it consistently reveals what remains unconscious, requiring courage to face aspects of yourself that may contradict your self-image or challenge your comfortable patterns. The spiritual wisdom surrounding marriage recognizes that conflicts between partners rarely concern the surface issues that trigger them. Arguments about household responsibilities, financial decisions, or time management are almost always symbolic representations of deeper soul patterns seeking integration. The surface conflict serves as the entry point to the real work, the reconciliation of opposing forces within your own consciousness. Your husband doesn't create your emotional reactions. He simply activates existing patterns that were established long before you met him. The intensity of your response to his behaviors correlates directly to the depth of the wound being touched. When you respond with disproportionate emotion to seemingly minor triggers, you're receiving valuable information about where significant healing potential awaits. These moments of activation, though uncomfortable, represent gifts of awareness that can lead to profound liberation when approached consciously. Every soul connection, particularly the profound bond of marriage, contains within it a complete spiritual arc, a beginning, a development, and ultimately, a completion. This final phase of the spiritual journey with your husband represents not failure, but fulfillment, not loss, but liberation. When the soul contract reaches its natural conclusion, a sacred transition occurs that honors the purpose of your union, while allowing both souls to continue their individual evolutionary paths. The spiritual understanding of relationship completion transcends the conventional view of endings as tragedy. As Edgar wisely observed, love is never lost, it only transforms. This transformation may manifest as a physical separation through divorce, a transition through death, or even a profound shift within an ongoing marriage where the initial soul contract completes and a new agreement forms. Recognizing when a cycle has fulfilled its purpose represents spiritual maturity rather than relationship failure. The completion of a marital soul contract often announces itself through a profound sense of completion, a knowing that the lessons which brought you together have been integrated, the wounds have been healed, or the karmic balancing has been achieved. This completion may arrive with a sense of peaceful resolution, or through the intensity of conflict that signals the final catalyst for transformation. The soul recognizes fulfillment even when the personality resists the change it necessitates. Many remain in marriages long after their spiritual purpose has been fulfilled, creating unnecessary suffering through attachment to form rather than essence. The spiritual perspective honors that some relationships are designed to last a lifetime in physical form, while others complete their purpose through transformation or transition. Neither pattern is superior. Each serves the unique evolutionary needs of the souls involved. Recognizing when a cycle has completed requires deep listening to spiritual wisdom beyond conventional social expectations. The endings within marriage, whether through divorce, death, or internal transformation, serve as powerful spiritual initiations. These transitions strip away illusions, challenge identities, and force encounters with the unknown. What appears as painful loss from a human perspective often represents a sacred threshold from a soul perspective, a passage into new dimensions of consciousness that could only be accessed through the dissolution of previous forms. These endings aren't punishments, but promotions in the soul's journey. Even marriages that end painfully through betrayal, abandonment, or conflict fulfill their spiritual purpose when approached with consciousness. The most challenging endings often catalyze the most profound spiritual awakenings, forcing encounters with shadow aspects that might have remained hidden in more comfortable circumstances. The spiritual invitation within painful endings isn't to assign blame or victimhood, but to recognize the perfect design of even difficult transitions for soul evolution. The spiritual wisdom traditions teach that souls remain connected beyond physical separation. The energetic bonds formed through intimate relationship continue to evolve even when the outer form changes or dissolves. When a marriage completes its cycle, the connection doesn't disappear, but transforms, operating at more subtle levels or serving different purposes in each soul's journey. This continuity explains why certain former partners remain in our awareness long after physical separation. The transformation that occurs when a marriage cycle completes often requires a period of conscious grieving, not just for the relationship itself, but for the identity and expectations associated with it. This sacred grieving honors the significance of the connection while creating space for new life to emerge. Rather than rushing past this process or suppressing its expression, the spiritual approach embraces grief as a purifying fire that prepares the ground for new growth. Many fear the ending of relationships because they mistake form for essence. The spiritual understanding recognizes that the essence of what two souls create together, the love, growth, and consciousness expansion, remains eternally preserved in the fabric of existence, regardless of whether the form continues. Nothing real is ever lost in the dissolution of form. Rather, the essence is liberated to express in new ways. This recognition transforms fear of ending into trust in transformation. The completion of a marriage cycle often coincides with significant spiritual awakening for one or both partners. The energy previously invested in maintaining patterns, roles, or expectations becomes available for consciousness expansion when the cycle fulfills. This explains why many experience their most profound spiritual insights during or after relationship transitions. The dissolution of form releases energy for transformation at more fundamental levels of being. From the highest spiritual perspective, no relationship truly ends. It only transforms. The consciousness created through your connection with your husband continues to evolve beyond physical separation, beyond changing circumstances, even beyond death. What appears as ending from the perspective of form represents merely a phase transition from the perspective of essence. The love created between two souls becomes a permanent contribution to the evolution of consciousness itself. The spiritual invitation within relationship completion isn't to grasp tightly to what was, or to rush prematurely toward what might be, but to remain fully present to the sacred threshold itself. When you stand consciously at this threshold, neither clinging to the past nor reaching for the future, you access the timeless dimension where all manifestations of love, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously. This presence transforms the experience of ending from loss into liberation. Many marriages that appear to end actually fulfill their highest purpose through their completion. The courage to honor a completed cycle, whether through conscious uncoupling, compassionate separation, or internal transformation within an ongoing relationship, represents spiritual maturity rather than failure. Sometimes the greatest act of love is the willingness to release attachment to form so that both souls can continue their evolution in alignment with their highest purpose. As you navigate the completion of cycles within your marriage, whether they involve the entire relationship or specific phases within an ongoing connection, remember that nothing real is ever lost. The growth catalyzed through your relationship, the healing achieved through your challenges, and the consciousness expanded through your connection remain permanent acquisitions of both souls. These spiritual achievements transcend the temporary forms through which they were realized. The spiritual perspective on relationship completion invites a profound shift from fear to trust, Trust that when cycles fulfill their purpose, the transition serves the highest good of all involved. This trust doesn't eliminate the human experience of loss, but infuses it with meaning that transcends personal suffering. When you trust the perfect design of beginnings and endings in the soul's journey, you can approach transition with gratitude rather than resistance, with openness rather than closure. If these spiritual insights about your marriage resonated with you, please subscribe to continue our exploration of life's deeper meanings together. Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story may be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. Remember, understanding the spiritual purpose of your relationships is just the beginning of your awakening. Join our community of seekers and let's walk this path of consciousness together.